Hey guys, in this video I have a slight confession. We are going to be fixing something that I broke while trying to fix something else. So I'm in the process of doing the floor pans in the Jeep. I found a weak spot in the unibody, so what I was trying to do was plate the back of it to cover up a slight, we'll call it a rot hole. And in doing so, I overheated the metal just a little bit and somehow, some way, weakened or broken my brake line, which actually caused a fire. Yes, a fire. Luckily, I was able to put it out with the help of a fire extinguisher. These things are very handy. So, I don't know if it was necessarily the heat from the welder, which I seriously doubt. It might have been the cutting disc I was using to cut some of the floor away. Who knows? At this point, the only thing I know for sure is that I do need to replace my brake line, and that's what we're going to be covering today. So upon looking online, there's a couple different options you can go with. You can go with steel line. I believe there's even plastic coated line. I decided to try something a little bit different. This is nickel copper line. I don't know a whole heck of a lot about it, but based on what I have read online, this stuff holds up really well. It's very easily bent, and you don't even need tools. You can bend it basically in your hand. It flares really well, and it's copper, or mostly it's partly copper, so it's resistant to rust, which in the Northeast, that's a bonus. Upon further research, I found that the brake lines for the Jeep are 3/16, and that's what I got. I got 3/16. Picked this up off Amazon for, I want to say, about $30 shipped. It includes 25 feet of line, various fittings, and as I was unpacking it, they even put a thread pitch guide in there as well, so you know what each fitting is for a thread pitch, so that way you don't cross thread or put the wrong stuff in there. It comes with standard and metric. So overall, this is a pretty cool kit. Hopefully it fits my needs. I haven't been able to pinpoint the hole in the line yet. It seems to be right around the cross member for the transmission, and it's tucked up high the long arm kit, so it's kind of hard to see right now. So my plan is I'm going to get on the Jeep, trace the line from the rear fitting where it goes into the soft line for the rear axle all the way to the front of the master cylinder. So what I'm going to do is unwind a decent length of the tube. I'm going to run it over my cross member, get it to the front right by the firewall, bend it up, and then start to do all my hard bends right in the engine bay first, because this is the hard stuff. I want to get this over with, make sure everything clears, and then I'm going to go to the back, which is actually pretty basic. It just follows the unibody all the way back to the soft line right above the rear axle. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it does do like a 90-degree into it, but either with the new tool or I can bend it by hand, whatever is easiest and cleanest. So that's kind of what I'm going to do. So I'm under the Jeep. I'm just tracing the line. So here's where it goes into the soft line over just above the rear axle, and it follows here. This is the path. Now, something that kind of leads me to believe that this has already been replaced once is the line's in really good shape, and all the other times I've ever seen these lines, they're actually higher up on this bracket here of the retainer. So I gotta wonder if this has been replaced before. It does look like it doesn't follow factory bends, at least up front. So I gotta wonder if this was replaced. This is indeed the line that does run to the back of the Jeep. Okay. That one's already popped off. And that one's free. Okay. So now, excuse the line. There we go. So now my line is loose. Let's see, I'm using 9/16. Using a line wrench. You want these type of wrenches at least to start pulling off the fitting because you don't want to roll these fittings. These wrenches, I'm not gonna say prevent it, but definitely limit the chance of rolling those lines. Oh wow, it came out relatively easy. I'm scared. Okay. Pulled out the fitting. Not a lot of fluid came out, so this thing must have been really dry. I'm just going to go ahead, snip this off, and then compare this to my new fitting. If I don't have something that's close or whatever, I might actually just reuse this, clean this up, because this fitting looks like it's in pretty good shape, and no sense in throwing it away. So and I can save the new one. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and reuse this. This is a good fitting. So yeah, let me just cut it off. In an effort to not have to flare at least the front of this on the vehicle, I'm going to go ahead and do my double flare on the bench. Peace of mind, I'm just going to go ahead and make my own cut. That way I know it's nice and flush. Just gonna go ahead, pull the burrs out at least. I'm using a little pick. Make sure there's nothing in that line. I'm just gonna flat file it down. Okay. Deburr it one more time. Okay. Okay. So now that I've cut it, I have a nice flat edge. I deburred it, and I filed it down so there's no sharp edges. I'm going to go ahead, put the tube into the vise here, the vise grip, or I'll just call it the vise. Then you take the die, make sure you use the right size, 3/16. And what you want to do is have about the same amount of tube sticking out as thick as the die is. Just like that. Okay. Once you get the right amount of stick out, you're going to want to tighten this down. Okay. I've actually over tightened these and broken the clasp. Okay. Let's see how it goes. Take the die. If you look inside, it's kind of hard to see, but it's got a taper on it. Basically put the little prong in the brake line. And now, what you're going to want to do is put the pointy end in the end of the die and just tighten down. And I already messed it up. Let's do that again. That's awful, man. I should have known better. So I didn't tighten this down enough. The smart part of me says I should cut it and do it again. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the new line, I'm going to run it over the cross member up into the engine bay, and I'm not going to bend it too much yet, but I want to loosely run everything so I know and plan out my bends and know where it's going to be routed. the back one for me was 3/8. Used the flare, broke it loose. So just to recap, I have the front line run. It's not finished yet, but for the most part it's run to give me a general idea of what I need. It runs down, all the way down to the unibody, then 90 degrees along the unibody, and then 45s off in front of the firewall, and then kind of meets all the other lines, the gas line and the evap line, and starts to run the length of the unibody. It's really hard to see, but I put it in the factory location. Then it goes over the control arm mount, and then is now riding right here in these holders to keep it off the unibody, keep it from rubbing. So I've gotten it to right here, and this is where I'm going to keep it for the time being until I can clean up this mess, get rid of the old line, which is still threaded in to the fitting in the back for the soft line for the rear axle. But that I'm going to take care of right now and clean it up, and I'll be right back. Take my file, just to make sure I have a nice clean, burr-free cut. Okay, I think we're good. Actually, that looks like a nice good cut. And make sure you put your fitting on prior to flaring. Now the scary part. Right. Check. Yep, we're good there. Doing this on the vehicle is much harder. Let's try to do this first try. Okay, you want these as tight as you can possibly get them without snapping. Got 3 bolts there. Now that we got that all, go ahead and let's go. Okay, almost there. Almost there. See how well. I really don't like doing this on your vehicle, but unfortunately it's really part of the deal. Like this. Not terrible. Let's see if we can salvage this. Okay. Let's see what we came up with. Oh, not bad. I like it. Now the only problem is starting this thing. Try to strain on as much as I can. Okay. What was that? That was not that. That was this one. That was 3/8. Yep, 3/8. Now we got everything run, we got everything cut, everything threaded up. I'm just going to go back up front and check to make sure all the clearances are good and get that front exactly the way I want. Tighten up the tighten up the fitting, put some fluid in it, bleed it, and we're good. I have a feeling that this wasn't the greatest flare. So it's kind of, if you want to call it funny, that the flare that I did in the more opportune or more idealistic environment, you know, on the bench where I had all the room in the world to work, ended up being what looked like the flare that ended up failing. So, course of action now, I'm going to take the failed flare off. Try to fix it on the vehicle. Cut off as little as I can, reflare, and then try again. This is why you want to leave yourself a little bit of room for error, because not all flares work first time. This is the first one that's failed on me in a little while. This is also the first time I've used nickel copper too, so it's a little bit softer. You have to be a little bit more ginger with it, but it's also more flexible, easier to bend, easier to manipulate to where you want it to go. So let's see if I can fix this. So what I went ahead and did was pulled my airbox. I don't know if it's necessarily a good idea that I drop this all the way underneath the vehicle and potentially, oh god, that flare looks like crap. Yeah, I should have done better. You know, potentially cause a crimp or a bend. Although it feels like with this copper line, there's not a really big chance of that happening unless you legitimately try to bend it in half. So I'm going to just go ahead, or what I did was just pulled my airbox out, 2 bolts, 2 straps, and 2 bolts, 2 straps, and a couple clips. Literally 2 minutes later, I have room to work. I think we're good. I think we are good. Now, since I took a little bit off, I can just manipulate the brake line so it's not hitting the body and missing the steering, which it did. So in addition, I think if I decide to ever do the front brake lines on the Jeep, the ones that go across the engine bay, I'm most likely going to be using Nick Copper. Very easy to bend. You form with your hands. You can pretty much do whatever you need to do. I want to say the only thing you got to be careful about is when you do the flares on the Nick Copper, it doesn't seem to be nearly as forgiving as steel. I've had much better success flaring steel. Just it seems to be a little bit more forgiving. This is really soft, so that you kind of have to nail it first try. So just a tip, if you do decide to go Nick Copper, I would leave yourself just a little extra in case you need to cut off a flare and reflare it. So that being said, hope you enjoyed the video. Please like, share, and subscribe. Leave the comments down below, and let me know what you think of the Nick Copper brake line.